The breaking news is that the first coronavirus vaccine has been approved for use in the UK by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, that's the MHRA. As promised, let's speak now to the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, who joins us live on Breakfast. A significant smile on your face this morning, Mr Hancock. Talk us through this news and what it means to the people in the UK this morning.
Well, 2020 has been such a terrible year, hasn't it? And help is on its way. And this news, for so long we've been saying that if a vaccine is developed, then things will get better in 2021. And now we can say when this vaccine is rolled out, things will get better. And we'll start that process next week. So I'm obviously absolutely thrilled with the news. I'm very proud that the UK is the first place in the world to have a clinically authorised vaccine ready to go. The huge thanks to the scientists, to Pfizer, the company, obviously to my team and Kate Bingham and Alok Sharma, the business secretary, who's done a huge amount of work on this. But what it means for people is that from next week, we'll be able to start rolling this out. We'll start with those who are most vulnerable to coronavirus. And it will. You need 2 jabs, so 21 days apart. And after that, we will start protecting people as the protection comes with these 2 jabs, and it will help save lives. And then, once we've started to and protected the most vulnerable, it will help us all get back to normal and back to all the things that we love.
Can we go through some of the numbers if possible? Because I'm sure that's what our viewers will be thinking this morning. OK, how many, when does it arrive? So there's that initial order of 10 million, which is enough to vaccinate 5 million people. Do we know how many of those will be arriving next week?
Well, next week there'll be 800,000, so it's the first start. We'll then deploy it at the speed that it's manufactured. And the manufacturing, of course, is being done by Pfizer in Belgium, and so that will determine the speed at which we can roll it out. As we've said all along, we've always said even if we get something before Christmas, we will have the bulk of the rollout in the new year, and that's what will happen in this case. As you said earlier in the programme, we have 40 million doses on order of this vaccine. The other early vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, is currently being assessed by the MHRA. So the goal will be to vaccinate through the NHS right across the UK as rapidly as the company can manufacture.
OK, I know we've got you for about another 10 minutes, and there are so many questions which I'm sure we're going to try and get as much information out of you as possible as we can. Can I start with that 800,000 that you say will arrive next week? Who will be on the list to get that first batch, if you like?
Well, the Joint Committee on Vaccinations and Immunisations, long title, but they're the clinical advisors who advise on that prioritisation. So it's according to clinical need. The goal is to save as many lives as possible and stop hospitalisations. So it will start with the most elderly and with people in care homes, and of course their carers to make sure that others don't catch it. And then essentially it comes down the age range. NHS staff are also high on that priority list. And also the clinically extremely vulnerable who we've supported throughout this crisis, those who are particularly vulnerable to coronavirus. The details of that will be set out mid-morning by the JCVI, and the regulators will also be setting out the details of the clinical trials and why they felt able to approve this vaccine. So that will happen later this morning, and the full prioritisation will be set out. And then the vaccine will be rolled out from next week.
OK, so 800,000 next week. Is it your understanding, Mr Hancock, that all 10 million of those, which are going to be manufactured in Belgium, as you said, will arrive before Christmas, or is it going to be a longer process than that?
No, the timing will be determined by how rapidly they can be manufactured. So the numbers, we haven't put a figure on the numbers before Christmas. But what we do know is that we can get started next week with that first load, and then several millions will be coming throughout December. And people will be contacted by the NHS when it's their turn. And I urge you very strongly to come forward, because obviously being vaccinated is good for you. It's approved as clinically safe by the regulator, and it's good for your community as well, to help keep get this virus finally under control once and for all.
We spoke to you, I think, a couple of weeks ago on the day that this was all announced, and we talked then about the huge logistical task that is going to be set before, not just this country, but countries all over the world as we try and vaccinate. Can you give our viewers an idea this morning how exactly it will work? We know, don't we, it needs to be stored at about -70. So where will this be taking place? Are we looking at specific areas, like maybe those Nightingale hospitals that will be used? Is it going to be GP surgeries? How will it work?
Yeah, so there's three modes of delivery for this vaccine right across the UK. And this morning I spoke to my devolved colleagues because the NHS, of course, is devolved in Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. We're doing this on a UK basis right across the entire UK at the same time. And there's three modes of delivery. The first is hospitals themselves. And of course, most hospitals have the facilities to store something at -70, and they're used to dealing with vaccines and drugs that have these characteristics. The second is that we will set up vaccination centres, big centres, a bit like the Nightingales project, and including some of the Nightingales, and we'll set them up across the country. And then the third is a community model, with the support of GPs and pharmacists and others to be able to get out to people where they are. Now, because of the -70 conditions of this vaccine, that third model is harder, because obviously you have to go to places that have got the facilities that can safely store the vaccine whilst it's waiting to be injected. And that is, the AstraZeneca vaccine, which doesn't have the -70 requirement, is better suited to that community model. But nevertheless, we'll be using these three models: hospitals, the vaccination centres, and the community rollout, and in order to reach people, all guided by that clinical priority and the prioritisation that will be set out later today.
You mentioned a couple of those other vaccines. I think it'd be really helpful. Can you give us any idea of the timescale for those? We know that Moderna, which I believe the UK has ordered up to 7 million doses of that. That went forward for regulation the day after Pfizer. So are we to anticipate maybe news on that in the next few days? And what about the AstraZeneca Oxford University vaccine? Where are we on the timescale of that, if you can, Mr. Hancock?
So the Moderna vaccine is only being manufactured for delivery in April. So that's still some time off. As you say, we have 7 million of that on order, but that's for April. The other early vaccine is the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine. That's currently with the MHRA, who are assessing the detailed data from those clinical trials in the same way that they've just assessed and authorised the Pfizer vaccine. Now, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine has a number of advantages, which is that it doesn't require the -70 storage conditions, and we've got 100 million of that on order. And so the timing of when we might hear on that is entirely in the hands of the regulator. I rightly can't affect that, and I don't know the timing, because they have to take all the time that they need. I mean, they've been absolutely brilliant through this, and we should pay tribute to the regulator. It's not often regulators get a shout out for doing great work, but they have to take the time that they need to assess whether they can authorise that vaccine in the same way that they've taken the time to be able to authorise this Pfizer BioNTech vaccine this morning.